my daughter-in-law told me. Stay outside, you smell like poverty. But seconds later, family can hurt the most when the very people you sacrificed everything for turn their backs on you. My name is Margaret, and I never thought I'd live to see the day when my own son would look at me with shame in his eyes. I was once a proud teacher. For 30 years I stood in front of chalkboards, writing lessons, correcting homework, and molding children into better versions of themselves. I never earned much, but I loved my work. I believed that if I poured myself into the lives of others, life would reward me through my own family. I raised my son, Daniel, on a teacher's salary after my husband passed away. I wore the same pair of shoes for 7 years, stitched and patched until they had no life left in them. Why? Because Daniel needed tuition fees, new books, clothes that made him feel like he belonged among the richer kids. I gave up everything to make sure he never felt the sting of poverty as deeply as I had. And for many years I thought it was worth it. I thought he understood. The day of his housewarming party was supposed to be a proud moment for me. Daniel had just bought a brand new home with his wife, Vanessa. It was a grand affair, with invitations sent to colleagues, neighbors, and friends. My heart swelled with excitement. I was going to see my son standing tall in the life I had dreamed for him. I remember standing in front of the mirror that afternoon. My reflection stared back at me, an aging woman with tired eyes, a dress that had faded over the years, and hands roughened by a lifetime of work. I brushed my graying hair back and told myself, it doesn't matter what you wear. You are his mother. That alone should be enough. With the little money I had, I bought a simple yet meaningful gift. A framed photo of Daniel as a boy, wearing his first school uniform, holding my hand on the way to class. To me it was priceless. To him, I hoped it would be a reminder of where he came from. I walked the long road to his house, each step filled with anticipation. The sound of music and laughter reached my ears before I even turned onto his street. His new house stood tall, bright lights spilling out of wide glass windows. Expensive cars lined the driveway, and well-dressed guests moved about like they belonged in a different world. His world. My heart pounded with pride. That's my son's house, I whispered to myself, clutching the gift tighter. I never imagined that within the hour, that pride would turn into the deepest humiliation of my life. Because when I finally knocked on that grand door, it wasn't my son who greeted me. It was Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. And the words that left her lips would cut deeper than any knife. Stay outside. You smell like poverty. Vanessa stood in the doorway like a queen guarding her castle. Her hair was pinned up in a sleek bun, diamond earrings glittering under the chandelier light. She wore a silk dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Behind her, I could hear laughter, clinking glasses, the sound of a piano playing softly in the background. For a moment I smiled. I thought she would hug me, welcome me in, call out, "Daniel, your mother is here." But instead, her nose wrinkled as though she had smelled something rotten. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice cold, clipped, like I was some uninvited stranger. I blinked, confused. I came for the party. Daniel invited me." She gave a short, cruel laugh, stepping closer so only I could hear. "A party? In this house? Look at you." Her eyes traveled down my faded dress, my old sandals, the wrapped picture frame trembling in my hands. "You don't belong here." I tried to steady my voice. "I'm his mother. That should be enough." That was when she leaned forward, her perfume choking the air between us, and spat the words that shattered me. "Stay outside. You smell like poverty." It was loud enough for the guests near the doorway to hear. A few gasped, others exchanged nervous glances. One man chuckled awkwardly and turned away, pretending to sip his drink. My heart sank. The ground could have swallowed me whole, and it still wouldn't have been enough to hide my shame. I clutched the gift to my chest. "Please, Vanessa. I just came to celebrate. I have nothing else to give him but my blessing." Her lips curled into a smirk. "Exactly. Nothing else. My husband doesn't need your blessing. He has me now. And I won't let you drag your smell of poverty into our new home. People will talk." The word struck like lightning. Drag your smell of poverty. Did she not know? Did she not care that every brick of her husband's success was built on my sacrifice? I tried to peer past her shoulder, hoping Daniel might appear, hoping my son would step forward and say, "That's my mother. Show her respect." But all I saw were strangers in fine clothes, sipping wine, laughing at jokes that cost more than my rent. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Where is Daniel? "He's busy greeting important people," she snapped. "And frankly, he doesn't need to see you right now. You'll embarrass him." Embarrass him. The word cut deeper than poverty ever could. Poverty I had learned to live with. Poverty had been my companion, my teacher, my burden. But to hear that I was now an embarrassment to the son I raised, that was a wound that would not heal. Behind me, I heard a couple whisper, "Isn't that his mother? She doesn't look like she belongs here." Heat rose to my face. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear before more eyes turned my way. I opened my mouth to protest, but the weight of years of silence pressed it shut. Instead, I held out the gift, my hands trembling. "Just give this to him," I whispered. "Please. Tell him I'm proud." Vanessa looked at the gift as though it were a piece of trash. She took it between two fingers, sneering. "A picture frame. How pathetic. Do you really think he'll care about this?" She shoved it into the hands of a passing waiter without a second glance. The sound of my heart breaking was louder than the music inside. I stood there, small and invisible, while laughter swelled in the living room. For a moment, I thought I saw Daniel in the distance, raising a glass in a toast, smiling proudly at his guests. He never once looked toward the door. Tears blurred my vision. I backed away slowly, my steps heavy, each one an anchor dragging me further into humiliation. The air outside was colder than I remembered. The night sky felt darker, heavier. As I walked down the driveway, I told myself one thing. Remember this moment. Remember every word. For the day will come when truth will speak louder than wealth, and humility will outshine arrogance. And deep down I knew I had been wounded, yes. But I was not defeated. I had barely made it to the street when I heard a voice call after me. For a split second my heart leapt. "Daniel. Playboy. He's coming for me. He'll make this right." I turned, and there he was, tall and handsome in his black suit, his tie shining under the porch light. The same boy I once walked to school barefoot so he could have shoes. The same boy who once hugged me and said, "Mama, when I grow up, I'll buy you the biggest house." But his face. It wasn't the face of the boy I remembered. It was stern, tight, eyes darting nervously toward the guests inside. "Mama," he said quickly, lowering his voice. "Why did you come like this?" The words knocked the air out of me. "Like this. Daniel, I came to see you. To celebrate. I brought you a gift." He glanced at the waiter still holding the wrapped frame like a piece of forgotten baggage. His jaw clenched. "Mama, please. You don't understand. People are watching." I stepped closer, reaching for his hand, but he stepped back. Back, as though my touch would stain him. "Daniel," I whispered, my throat tightening. "I'm your mother. Why are you ashamed of me?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not like that. Just, Vanessa's family is here. My colleagues are here. Mama, you should have told me before coming. You're not dressed for this. They'll think." He stopped himself. "They'll think what?" I asked, my voice trembling. His silence was louder than any insult. A car passed on the street, its headlights catching the tears on my cheeks. I tried to hold them back, tried to stand tall, but the weight of his rejection pressed me down. "I raised you, Daniel," I said softly. "Do you remember the nights I stayed awake sewing your school uniform by candlelight because we couldn't afford a new one? Do you remember the day you graduated and I stood in the back of the crowd, wearing the same dress I wear today, clapping until my hands ached? I never cared what people thought of me. I cared about you." He swallowed hard, his eyes flickering with something, shame, regret. But it vanished in an instant. He straightened his tie and said the words that pierced me deeper than Vanessa's cruelty ever could. "Mama, please. Just go home. We'll talk later. Go home." 2 little words that shattered everything. I wanted to scream, to remind him that there would be no later without me. That everything he had came from my sacrifices. But the lump in my throat grew too heavy. I could only nod. I turned and walked away, the laughter from his house spilling out behind me like cruel music. Each step felt like walking barefoot on broken glass. Neighbors outside on their porches stared. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others whispered. I could hear fragments carried by the night air. "Isn't that his mother? Why didn't they let her in? She looked so sad." I kept walking, clutching my arms against the cold. By the time I reached my small apartment, the night had swallowed me whole. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the empty space where my husband once slept. For the first time in years I let myself cry. Not the quiet tears I'd learned to hide, but deep, heaving sobs that shook my chest. How quickly children forget. How quickly love turns to shame when money changes hands. I thought of Daniel's words. Go home. This was my home. Peeling paint, a flickering bulb, a table scarred by years of meals shared and sacrifices made. I had nothing, yet I had given him everything. And now, he wanted me gone. I wept until my tears dried into silence. And in that silence, something hardened inside me. Resolve. I whispered into the still air. They think I am poor. They think I am nothing. But one day they will know who I really am. And they will regret the day they pushed me aside. Little did they know, behind my faded dress and wrinkled hands lay a truth they had yet to uncover. The next morning, I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the empty cup of tea in front of me. The events of the night replayed in my mind like a cruel film. The disgust on Vanessa's face, the coldness in Daniel's eyes, the whispers of strangers. Every word, every glance, cut deeper the more I thought about it. But between the waves of hurt, another thought pressed itself into my heart. They think I am powerless. They think I am nothing. I rose from the table, wiped my face, and walked to the old wooden cabinet in the corner of my room. Its hinges squeaked as I pulled it open. Inside were folders, papers, and photographs. Pieces of a life no one at that glittering party had ever cared to ask about. I lifted one document. The deed to Riverside Academy, the small private school I had co-founded with my late husband 30 years ago. It wasn't a large school, but it was stable, respected, and full of children whose parents wanted more than the crumbling public system could provide. 4 years my husband and I had poured every spare coin into it. He had handled the building contracts and land purchase. I had handled the books, the teachers, the children. When he passed away, the responsibility fell entirely to me. Many assumed I sold it or left it behind when I retired from teaching. But no, Riverside Academy remained mine. Mine alone. The irony made me almost laugh. The very poor old woman Vanessa sneered at was the same woman signing checks for teachers' salaries, approving scholarship funds, and overseeing the education of more than 400 students. And yet I had never flaunted it. I had lived simply, intentionally, because wealth meant nothing to me without humility. To me, true wealth was seeing a child graduate, a struggling parent relieved, a life changed. I traced my fingers across a faded photograph of the schoolyard. Children in uniforms played on swings while I stood in the background, smiling, chalk dust still on my hands. This was the legacy Daniel had forgotten. A part of me longed to storm back into his mansion, slam the deed onto the dining table, and declare, "This is who I am. This is what I built while you dined on my sacrifice." But another part of me resisted. That wasn't who I was. Pride and arrogance were Vanessa's weapons, not mine. No, I decided. If the truth was to come out, it would come out naturally, when the time was right and when the lesson would cut the deepest. And as fate would have it, that time was closer than I thought. Because in just a few days, Riverside Academy was scheduled to host its annual charity gala, an event attended by city officials, business owners, and community leaders. I had sent invitations, as I always did, to every parent, including Daniel and Vanessa. I doubted they'd even noticed it among the expensive envelopes piling up in their mailbox. But if they came, they would see me not as the old poor woman they despised, but as the founder, the owner, the woman they had underestimated. I closed the cabinet gently, a calm resolve washing over me. My humiliation still burned, but beneath it now lived something stronger, the quiet certainty that pride always falls and truth always rises. I whispered into the empty room, as though speaking to my late husband. They think I am nothing, but soon they will see. Not because I want revenge, but because they must learn. I straightened my shoulders, picked up my bag, and prepared for the week ahead. The gala would come. And with it, the moment everything would change. Backhand index pointing right. Shall I move on to part 5, 800 words? The public exposure at the school gala, where the daughter-in-law is humiliated by the shocking reveal of the mother's true status. Alright, folded hands, now we reach the big turning point, the public exposure. Here's part 5, 800 words, written in the same Jennifer Stories tone. Cinematic, emotional, humiliating for the antagonist, vindicating for the mother. The night of the Riverside Academy Charity Gala arrived. The courtyard shimmered with strings of lights, banners fluttered gently in the evening breeze, and children in crisp uniforms guided guests to their seats. The air was filled with the scent of flowers donated by local families and the nervous excitement of teachers who had worked tirelessly to prepare the event. For me, it was always the most meaningful night of the year. Parents came not only to donate but also to celebrate what the school stood for, a second chance for children who might have otherwise been forgotten. I wore the same dress I had worn to Daniel's party, but this time I walked with my head high. This was my world. Here I was not a burden. I was a builder. As the courtyard filled, I scanned the crowd. And then, as if fate had orchestrated it, I saw them. Daniel and Vanessa. Vanessa wore a glittering gown. Her arm looped proudly through Daniel's as though she owned not only him but the very ground beneath their feet. She glanced around the schoolyard with thinly veiled disdain. "So this is it," she muttered, loud enough for a few guests nearby to hear. "The charity school with peeling paint." Daniel hushed her, his jaw tight, but he did not correct her. My heart clenched, but I held my tongue. Their lesson had not yet come. The evening began with performances. Children reciting poetry, a choir singing a hymn of gratitude, a small drama about the importance of kindness. The guests clapped warmly, but Vanessa leaned toward a neighbor and whispered with a smirk, "Cute, but so poor. I don't know why we were even invited to this." The neighbor, a local councilwoman, gave her a sharp look but said nothing. Still whispers began to stir. Finally, it was time for the keynote address. The principal, a dignified man with silver hair, stepped onto the stage. His voice rang with pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering tonight. Riverside Academy has stood for more than 3 decades because of one woman's vision. She believed that every child, rich or poor, deserves an education. That woman is not only the founder but also the heart of this institution. Tonight, it is my honor to introduce her, Mrs. Margaret Lawson." The applause erupted. All eyes turned to me. I rose slowly, walking to the stage with measured steps. Gasps echoed through the courtyard. Vanessa's jaw dropped. "Wait, what?" she whispered, clutching Daniel's arm. "Yes," the councilwoman beside her said coolly. "That is your mother-in-law. The woman you mocked." Daniel's face drained of color. He could not even look at me. I reached the podium, adjusting the microphone. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of the moment. I looked out at the sea of faces, parents, children, officials, and there in the middle, the son and daughter-in-law who had shamed me. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady. "Most of you know me simply as a retired teacher. What many do not know is that this school was my husband's dream and mine. We built it with our hands, with borrowed money, with long nights and many sacrifices. We built it for the children who had no voice. Tonight, as I stand here, I see not just a school, but a legacy of love." The crowd clapped, some even standing in respect. I continued, letting my eyes briefly rest on Daniel and Vanessa. Some may look at an old woman and see nothing but poverty. They may see worn clothes, tired hands, and assume there is no value. But true wealth is not measured in silk dresses or sparkling cars. True wealth is measured in the lives we touch, the love we give, and the respect we show. A hush fell over the courtyard. Vanessa squirmed in her seat. Daniel stared at the ground. I smiled softly, not with pride, but with quiet strength. Tonight I thank you all for supporting this mission, for standing with me, and for proving that even the smallest sacrifice can change the world of a child. Thunderous applause followed. Children rushed forward with flowers, hugging me tightly. Parents wiped their eyes. But in the crowd, Vanessa's face burned crimson. Guests leaned toward her, whispering, "Didn't she insult her? Called her poor?" The words spread like fire, wrapping around her like chains she could not escape. Daniel finally lifted his eyes to me, shame written across his face. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but the weight of his guilt silenced him. For the first time in days I felt no humiliation, no shame. Only peace. Because the truth had spoken louder than their insults ever could. The applause faded, and I stepped back from the microphone. The children's voices still echoed in my ears as they returned to their seats, their faces bright with pride. For me, this night was never about humiliation or revenge. It was about hope, about showing that even the smallest life could leave a mark worth remembering. But the weight of so many eyes on me lingered. I could feel the murmurs ripple through the crowd like wind through leaves. Guests whispered not about the gala, but about the scene unfolding. The poor woman mocked at her son's party, now standing as the honored founder of the school. I drew a slow breath and leaned once more toward the microphone, my voice calm, deliberate. I know tonight has been about celebration, but allow me a moment to speak from my heart, I began. The courtyard fell silent again, as though the night itself leaned in to listen. When I walked into this schoolyard for the very first time, it was nothing but bare ground and hope. My husband and I had nothing but a vision, that children, no matter how poor their beginnings, deserve dignity. We built these classrooms brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. There were days when I had nothing left but the clothes on my back and the belief that someday it would matter. I paused, my eyes sweeping over the crowd until they landed briefly on Vanessa. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her diamond earrings catching the light as though mocking her. I have lived long enough to know this, I continued. You can buy clothes but not character. You can purchase a house but not a home. You can dress yourself in gold and silk, but without humility, you will always be poor in spirit. The words landed heavily. A few guests nodded, some even clapped softly. Vanessa's face darkened. I raised my hand gently to quiet the murmurs. Do not mistake my words for bitterness. Hold no grudge. In fact, I am grateful, for even insults can remind us who we truly are. If others see poverty when they look at me, let them. For I know the riches that cannot be stolen: love, sacrifice, and respect. A hush lingered, the kind that carried truth deeper than anger ever could. I stepped away from the podium, and the principal returned to thank the guests. But even as he spoke, I could feel the atmosphere had shifted. No one looked at me the way Vanessa had at the door that night. Instead, they looked with new eyes, some with admiration, some with shame that they had once believed her whispers. As I returned to my seat, children pressed small hands into mine, their voices soft. "Thank you, ma'am. We love you, ma'am." Their gratitude was worth more than any applause. Across the courtyard, Daniel sat stiff, his hands clenched in his lap. He tried to meet my eyes but faltered, guilt dragging his gaze back down. Vanessa, however, burned with silent rage. I could see it in the tightness of her jaw, the way she tugged at her bracelet as though it were choking her. But I did not gloat. I did not need to. Because in that moment, everyone saw her for what she truly was, and me for what I had always been. The night continued, donations pouring in, promises of support renewed. Yet for Daniel and Vanessa, the gala was no longer about charity. It had become a mirror, and neither of them liked what they saw reflected. I sat quietly, my hands folded, my heart steady. I had said what needed to be said, not for revenge, but for truth. And sometimes, truth cuts deeper than cruelty ever could. The ride home from the gala was silent at first. The streetlights flickered across the windshield, throwing lines of gold and shadow across Daniel's face. He kept both hands tight on the wheel, his jaw locked. Beside him, Vanessa seethed. Her jeweled fingers tapped sharply against her phone screen as she scrolled through messages that were already pouring in. Whispered gossip had traveled faster than the car. Is it true? That's your mother-in-law. She owns the school. Didn't you laugh at her last week? Finally she snapped, her voice slicing through the quiet. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for me? For us. Daniel flinched, his eyes never leaving the road. Humiliating. His voice was low, dangerous. Vanessa, you told my mother to stay outside. You mocked her. You made her feel like dirt in front of everyone. And tonight you were exposed. The only one humiliated was you. She spun toward him, eyes blazing. Don't you dare put this on me. You didn't tell me she owned that school. How was I supposed to know? All I see is an old woman in faded clothes who smells like cheap soap. If you had been honest about her, I would have treated her differently. Daniel's grip on the wheel tightened. Differently. So respect depends on what she owns. On how rich she looks to you. Vanessa's silence was louder than words. Answer me, he shouted, slamming his palm against the steering wheel. The car swerved slightly before he straightened it again. She crossed her arms, her voice icy. Yes, respect is earned. And appearances matter. If she wanted respect, she should dress like it. Like it. Instead, she hides behind this saintly mask while living like a beggar. Daniel's chest heaved with rage. You shallow, ungrateful. Do you even hear yourself? That woman worked herself to the bone so I could study, so I could live the life I have now. You sit in that gown, dripping with jewelry, because of her sacrifices. And you spit on her. For the first time Vanessa faltered. Her eyes narrowed, but her voice trembled. Don't talk to me like that. I'm your wife. You're my wife, Daniel said, his voice breaking. But she is my mother. And you treated her like trash. The words hung heavy between them. By the time they reached their mansion, the silence had returned, but it was not peace. It was war waiting to ignite again. Inside, Vanessa ripped off her earrings and threw them onto the marble counter. Do you realize the damage this has done? People will never look at me the same. They'll whisper behind my back, laugh at me. And all because your mother couldn't stay in her lane. Daniel's eyes burned with fury. Her lane. Her lane was raising me while my father lay in the ground. Her lane was teaching kids by day and scrubbing floors at night so I could have books. Her lane was sacrificing every dream she ever had so I could have mine. And you dared to shut her out of her own son's life. Vanessa's lip trembled, but pride kept her chin high. If you're so ashamed of me, then maybe. Stop, Daniel cut her off. Don't you dare twist this. I'm ashamed of myself, Vanessa. Because I stood there and let you humiliate her. I let my own mother walk away in tears. I'm the one who told her to go home. His voice cracked, the weight of guilt finally pressing through. And that will haunt me until the day I die. For a brief moment, silence stretched between them, fragile as glass. But then Vanessa scoffed, her pride refusing to bend. So what now? Are you going to choose her over me? Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, as though seeing her for the first time. Her beauty, once dazzling, now looked hollow. The glitter of her gown, the sharpness of her eyes. None of it hid the emptiness underneath. I don't know yet, he admitted softly. But if you keep showing me this side of yourself, Vanessa, you might not like the answer. Her gasp filled the room, but Daniel turned away before he could see her reaction. For the first time since their marriage, the foundation beneath them cracked. And deep down both of them knew, it might never heal. The days after the gala were tense. Daniel barely spoke at home, burying himself in work, while Vanessa's anger simmered just beneath the surface. She could not bear the way people now looked at her. Neighbors whispering, church women turning their heads, colleagues smirking behind their hands. Every time her phone buzzed, it was another reminder of her disgrace. But instead of humility, Vanessa chose defiance. One evening, I heard about her through the school's board secretary. Vanessa had gone to the bank, strutting in with her usual confidence, demanding to discuss her family's assets. She wanted loans, partnerships, leverage, anything that would place her as the woman in control of Riverside Academy's resources. She even waved your last name around like a crown, the secretary said, shaking his head. But when we checked the documents, her face fell. Everything is in your name alone. Indeed, it was. My husband and I had been careful, and after his passing, I had ensured that the school remained mine legally. Vanessa had no claim, no matter how loudly she demanded. Still, she did not stop. The following week, she appeared at a small business luncheon in town. I was not there, but others told me how she boasted that she and Daniel would soon expand the Lawson family's school into a chain of academies. She painted grand pictures of new campuses, investors, profits. People nodded politely, but when asked for proof of her role, she faltered. By the end of the luncheon, the truth had spread. She had no authority at Riverside. None at all. Word traveled fast. Soon, everywhere Vanessa went, people remembered. Not the diamonds, not the gowns, but her cruel words at the gala. Isn't she the one who told her mother-in-law to stay outside? She called her poor. Can you imagine? The owner of the school she brags about. It was as though every whisper became a stone, weighing her down. Home, Daniel grew more distant. His shame gnawed at him, while her bitterness poisoned the air. One night, their argument spilled loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You don't defend me," Vanessa screamed. "You let them humiliate me. You let your mother steal the spotlight from me." Daniel's voice cracked through the house like thunder. "She didn't steal anything. She earned it. And you've done nothing but try to take what isn't yours. You think respect can be bought, Vanessa, but look at you. No one respects you. Not anymore." Her face went pale, but she clung to her pride. "So this is it. You'd rather choose her over me." Daniel's reply was cold, final. "If it comes to choosing between a woman who gave everything for me and a woman who only takes, then yes, I will choose her every time." The walls trembled with silence after that. The next morning, Vanessa tried one last desperate move. She stormed into the school itself, heels clacking across the tiled floor. Students paused in the hallways. Teachers frowned as she demanded to see her property. I was in my office when she barged in, fury blazing. "You've ruined me," she spat. "You've made me a laughingstock. But I'll make sure people know I'm the real lady of this family." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even rise from my chair. I simply slid a folder across the desk, the school's deed stamped, signed, sealed in my name. "Vanessa," I said quietly, "this school belongs to me. Your pride belongs to you. And both are exactly where they should be." She stared at the papers, her hands trembling, her chest heaving with fury. But she had nothing left to say. The silence of truth was louder than her rage. As she stormed out, whispers followed her down the hallway. Teachers, parents, even children, all saw her for what she was. No amount of jewels or silks could cover her poverty of spirit. That day karma had spoken, and for once I felt no sorrow, only peace. A few nights after Vanessa's public humiliation at the school, I heard a knock on my apartment door. It was late, too late for visitors. For a moment I thought it must be a mistake. But when I opened the door, there stood Daniel. He looked nothing like the polished man at the gala. His tie was gone, his shirt wrinkled, his face pale and drawn. His eyes, my boy's eyes, were swollen as though he had not slept in days. "Mama!" His voice broke on the first word. He tried to say more but could not. Instead, he fell to his knees right there in the hallway. "Daniel!" I gasped, reaching to lift him, but he clung to my hands, trembling. "Mama, forgive me," he sobbed. "I let her speak to you like that. I let her humiliate you. And worst of all, I told you to go home. I turned you away. You gave me everything and I treated you like nothing. I don't deserve to call you my mother." The tears I had tried to bury for days returned. They spilled freely now, not out of shame but out of the ache of seeing my child broken. I cupped his face in my hands, feeling the rough stubble against my palms, remembering the soft cheeks I once kissed goodnight. "Oh, Daniel," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I was never angry at you. Hurt, yes, but never angry. You are my son. A mother's heart doesn't stop beating for her child, no matter how deep the wound." He shook his head violently. "No, Mama. Don't make excuses for me. Failed you. I let her poison me. I cared more about appearances than about the woman who sacrificed her life for me. I saw you at that door and all I thought about was my reputation. Do you know what that makes me? It makes me worse than her." I pulled him up slowly, guiding him inside. He sat on my old sofa, burying his face in his hands. For a long while we said nothing. The silence was heavy but not empty. It was the silence of truth, of a wound finally uncovered. Last I spoke softly. "Daniel, you must understand something. Respect is not about money or status or the way people look at you. Respect begins in the home. In how a son honors his mother, and how a wife honors her husband's family. That night you failed me, but admitting it now is the first step toward being the man I always knew you could be." He lifted his head, tears streaming. "I'll do better, Mama. I swear it. I'll stand by you. I'll protect you no matter what it costs. If Vanessa cannot accept that, then she will not remain my wife." The words stunned me, but I saw the fire in his eyes. For the first time in years, he looked not like the polished man chasing status, but like the boy I had raised, the boy with dreams, with heart. I reached for his hand and squeezed it. "I do not want to see you destroy your marriage in anger, Daniel. But I will say this. A wife who cannot respect her husband's mother will never truly respect her husband. Choose wisely, my son. Choose not what is easy, but what is right." He nodded, sobbing again, his forehead pressed to my hand. "I will, Mama. I will." And in that moment I forgave him, not because he had earned it, but because a mother's love demands it. In the days that followed, things in Daniel's home changed. Neighbors said Vanessa grew more bitter, angrier with every whisper she overheard in town. The shame of being exposed as shallow and cruel clung to her like a shadow she could not outrun. Daniel, on the other hand, changed in another way. He visited me often, sometimes with groceries in his arms, sometimes with nothing but apologies on his lips. He helped fix the broken light bulb in my kitchen, carried firewood for me when the nights grew cold, and sat quietly at my table just to hear me talk. It was as though the scales had fallen from his eyes. For the first time in years, he no longer saw me as an embarrassment, but as the mother who had built his world with her own two hands. And Vanessa, well, pride has a way of breaking those who hold it too tightly. She could not bear that her schemes had failed, that the same woman she once called poverty was richer than she could ever be in respect and dignity. Eventually, she packed her bags and left Daniel's house. Some said she ran to another man with wealth. Others said she simply vanished into her own bitterness. As for me, I did not rejoice in her downfall. I did not smile at her departure. I only prayed that one day she would learn the lesson she had missed, that arrogance may glitter for a season, but it will never last. Daniel sat across from me one evening, his voice low, his eyes filled with remorse. "Mama," he said, "I will spend the rest of my life honoring you. I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure it never happens again." I touched his hand and smiled softly. "Honor isn't in words, Daniel. It's in how you live. Treat others with the respect you once withheld from me. Be a husband who stands for truth. Be a man your children will one day look up to without shame." He nodded, tears glistening again in his eyes. "I will, Mama. I promise." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the strange way life had unfolded. I had walked to his party in the same faded dress I had worn for years, clutching a simple frame of an old memory. I had been told to stand outside, shamed before strangers, told I smelled of poverty. And yet, just days later, truth had revealed itself in the most unexpected way. It was never my wealth that mattered. It was the respect I had earned through years of sacrifice, the legacy of children whose lives I had touched, the strength of dignity that no insult could erase. And I realized then, poverty is not in clothes or in houses or in gifts wrapped in cheap paper. True poverty lives in the heart of the arrogant. And true wealth lives in the soul of the humble. Studio microphone narrator's closing, Jennifer's story style. Never judge a parent by the clothes they wear or the gifts they bring. Behind their wrinkles are sleepless nights spent working for you. Behind their simple shoes are miles walked to give you a better life. Wealth can build walls, but only love can build homes. Remember, a mother's sacrifice is priceless, and her dignity should never be mocked. This was Jennifer's Stories. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. For more stories where family can hurt the most, but truth and justice always shine in the end. This stories, where family can hurt the most, but truth and justice always shine in the end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.